What is up, YouTube, Steam blockchain? So today I want to do a video on something that sort of enters my consciousness a little bit more daily. I may have talked about it a little bit in the past, but that is that the concept of fiat money basically being grandpa money, and that it's just a different generation. So I would say right now, in terms of internet, sort of we're not many people think we already are in the digital generation, and that the digital generation started maybe even in the 90s. I would not say that, because that generation, even if we go back to year 2000 or 2002, yes, they were early. They were using technology a little bit. Maybe they were using technology 10%, but 90% of their mindset would sort of be on sort of the physical dimension and all of this. And now I would say we're sort of, we kind of, I would say that this current sort of generation, around 2019, around 50% digital generation, but we're not fully there yet in a fully digital generation. My view of a fully digital generation is a digital generation that is using modern technology and is basically making a living out of it using the new systems. So, for example, that means that a lot of these old services doesn't apply. If we take Spotify, we take Facebook, we take YouTube, we take Instagram, how people are earning money there is they're still sort of playing in the old physical system, the fiat grandpa money system, and they're using digital tools, but they're not 100% into the digital sphere. So they're kind of a generation in between at the moment, I would say around 2019, stepping into soon 2020. It's not really fully a digital generation. It's probably going to take another 10 years. And what I mean is, you want to sort of close the loop. That would say that you have a digital generation that is earning using digital tools and doesn't have to go into what I would call the offline, this sort of the physical sort of infrastructure, the physical generation with fiat money, how it's so tied down to other 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 structures, and other structures that are not so compatible with the digital generation. The digital generation sort of with the crypto blockchain token stuff, that has come because there's a demand for that. It's a demand to have updated systems that just works instantly. So there's a massive demand for that, and that is why new technology is coming in. So a lot of these services that launched around 2005, Facebook, YouTube, and then later Twitter, all of these are sort of, they're not fully digital platforms. They're not made fully for a digital generation. So they're kind of half in between. So people are sort of frustrated in many ways because they sort of are half in between. They're not, they only have the communication, but they don't have full communication with value. They only have the text communication or media communication, but it's not really compatible with, let's say, a global world where you're looking more at the world. The digital generation is more looking at the world from sort of like a global cosmic identity in many ways, because they're interacting with so many more people that are not so much based on a local area. It's more global because they're sort of realizing, well, we get way more interesting value and way more interesting information if sort of work together here. And so yeah, and can fiat play in that sort of global sphere easily? Well, if I'm looking at it, it's mainly good for national stuff like clothes in a system in a town, and it usually works best then if people have some physical location they're working at, and they're getting some form of salary, where that concept of salary in this tokenized world, it becomes a little bit different. But because it's not something that you get like monthly, it's something that you get maybe daily, and maybe you get paid instantly, or every week, or it's going to be instant. Eventually it's going to be instant. So that sort of concept of salary, the fiat salary, the grandpa fiat salary, it's sort of that's so attached to the physical sort of world. That sort of paradigm is sort of, we're sort of moving, let's say, to another paradigm then, also in terms of how you sort of using these technologies. So 2019, still going into 2020, as I said, I would say we're around 50% moving into like a digital generation, and we're probably going to see it becoming a bit more full-fledged digital generation that has the best software and best hardware and the best kind of tools around 2025 to 2030. That's probably going to be a really interesting time, because then we really can see how human beings can use these, because then they can basically innovate quickly without having to deal so much with, well, if you want to get things done in the older systems, you have to work with super many people. While with these new systems, with faster value systems, you can work with AI, or you can innovate yourself. You can build something, and it just goes quicker. And it's in many ways cuts through the noise, because instead of going and trying to find a little bit of scarce knowledge from different people, as many people are doing in the physical world. They're calling someone, they have to go see someone. A lot of this is so much waste, because usually the source that they're going to get some information, is usually a lot of ignorance. And what happens with the digital generation is, well, first they have these maybe 10 a period of 10-15 years where they're just gathering knowledge, just gathering knowledge, just gathering knowledge. And then this eventually compounds until they know so much that eventually they have 20 years of gathering knowledge. And then in a couple of years they get this exponential growth curve of they finally getting some value. And then you really can start to see that, well, these people are actually very intelligent, even though it took around 20 years for them to, it seems like they're not really doing anything. But eventually you sort of see, well, they're not on the grandpa fiat system anymore, they're using something that's way better, way faster. And then eventually you're gonna start to see sort of this transition into faster systems. For example, Steam blockchain transacting, sending value over in 3 seconds without fees. And as I talked a little bit about in the past, I think that the big thing is probably not gonna be so much about the transactions, but more about the people empower each other with sort of tokens, and that is actually the main thing that like makes stuff way more exciting. Because the transactions that people are doing, let's say how people looked at transactions in the fiat grandpa system, was they only used fiat for survival. They buy food, they buy or they rent some place, but mainly probably 80-90% of the value instantly goes to the atom, maybe 70%, while maybe 30% or 20% goes to leisure. While in these tokenized systems, that is more abundant, it sort of it opens up for more of that value flow can instantly be pushed to retain talent or the people that are sort of on systems. So more value, tokenized value, goes to empower people. And that's something that doesn't happen really so much with the fiat, because it operates in another sort of dimension there, where it's mainly for sort of survival. It would be sort of weird in many ways to sort of pay people fiat, like empower them, uh, in terms of especially when people are posting so much, when they're posting so much medium and daily. It's like you can't use fiat to like support that. Like you need some tokenized systems. So it's kind of interesting to sort of consider that. And the speed, the time saving thing, that is That is really, really cool because people love to have more time over. The more time they have over, the more they can think up more intelligent stuff. And even though not on paper, they may not have a salary, these small value flows that comes in here and there, it sort of makes stuff work eventually. But it sort of is just because it's not as a rigid structure. So the old system was more rigid, where everyone has sort of very, very clear exclusive roles. It's way more fluid. It's way more fluid in sort of these new inclusive systems. There is not so much anyone has a clear role, but if people use their intelligence, you can sort of see it from a daily from a daily perspective. You can, if you're alert, you can sort of see that it's engaging. Like it's very, very engaging because you're getting so much new input, and that's kind of exciting. And that's probably how sort of life should be in many ways, when society in a way can reach a very, very interesting abundant state. So that is what I wanted to talk a little bit about today. So fiat money, grandpa money, you need something that's faster, more efficient, something that's more compatible with a digital age that can work super fast. And that's why blockchains and crypto and stuff like that becomes a thing. Yeah, have a great day, YouTube and Steam blockchain. Bye bye.